Proud Mouth. Be your own loud.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Be Your Own Loud podcast / live stream. I'm Matt Halloran, your host. First, I want to give a shout out to everybody who's joining us on all of our different channels, which is YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn. Thank you for being here. Our guest today is Kristen Yoder. Now, when we look for guests for this live stream and podcast, the big thing is to find somebody who's truly risen above the noise to be their own loud. And I found Kristen on LinkedIn, and I am just absolutely blown away by the amount of exposure that she's had, the places that she's had exposure, and also the fact that she is the host of the Cannabis BS Detector podcast. She's an outspoken cannabis personality and a person who really does embody everything that we love here at Proudmouth. So, Kristen, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I start all of these off the same way, which I really just want to know your story. Like, how did you get to kind of being this personality, the host? You have over 100 podcast episodes. You're a sought after consultant. How did all of that happen?
Oh, it's been a very long journey. So I've been in the Los Angeles cannabis industry since 2005, which, keep in mind, we didn't have legalization until 2018. So it was a wild ride. And I started off managing one of the first dispensaries in the city of Los Angeles for 5 years. Then I grew for 2 years. Then I managed an edible company for 3 years. Then I did project management at a testing lab for a year, management consulting for a year, and then strategic advising, podcast, education for the past 4 years. It's been crazy.
What did you do to get the level of attention? Now, when I say level of attention, I want our listeners to understand that she has literally been on every reputable, very keyword there, news agency, Vanity Fair, Forbes, Young Turks. I mean, you've been on television. I mean, all of this stuff. How did you get there? How did you get those people's attention?
I think it's because I represent a different point of view than everyone else. And my view that it was developed over the years as being a young woman in the cannabis industry, which is a very male-dominated industry full of opportunistic criminals and fraud and all kinds of shit. And after a while, I think it was around 2016, I tried management consulting, and my business partner was the most positive, energetic person ever. And I, in comparison, was the most nihilistic, negative, dead inside person ever. And I'm yo, either she's nuts or I'm off, something is off.
Sure.
And after a year, we split, and I got on LinkedIn and I put BS detector in my title. I like to say you can't spell cannabis without the BS. It's just a part of it. And I just started posting my point of view, which is often contrary to what you hear in the media. And people loved it because somebody has to tell the truth. And it's hard. If you're a good person, you'll probably get ripped off. You don't make a lot of money. Most of the times you're going to lose money getting into this. Everyone thinks it's like puppies and rainbows, but it's totally opposite. And every time a state legalizes it, it gets even more corrupt and fucked up. So it wasn't very hard to get my voice heard. And I've never paid for PR ever. It's just no one says what I say. And that's because a lot of them have financial obligations. But I got to the point where even if it hurts my pocketbook, it feels so fucking good to tell the truth. And I don't put companies by name unless they're awful on blast. I put what they do on blast. And
Okay.
I'm trying to educate people. And it's like when you sell a CBD product, there's 1,000 different CBD products that are the same. How do you get press? Because you're not selling anything new. But when you're saying something no one else is saying, it's really not that hard to be heard.
So we talk about this a lot on the podcast. We call it the pick. Well, we don't call it. It's a pick a fight strategy, right? And so part of being a cult brand, part of really truly getting the attention that you have is picking a fight, and you've picked some pretty amazing fights. In fact, fights to the point where you've actually had not necessarily the nicest things said about you, and also that you've made I think when we talked earlier, you said it was almost a 180 on this industry. Would you mind talking a little bit about both of those things, like when you've really had to put up your dukes and fight back, and then also the change?
Honestly, the only time people have talked shit to me has been when I quit smoking weed, and I started talking about my struggles with it. The problem with this industry is the cognitive dissonance is so fucking deep. It's like we have been fighting for so long for legalization to be recognized as a legitimate medication out that is safer than almost all pharmaceuticals. And when I said that I realized that I had an addiction to weed because I was using it to not cope with things and I was struggling to quit, like I couldn't quit, I couldn't moderate my use, I was spending money I didn't want to, then yeah, people got really defensive. But it's like, I understand because I've been there, but I've never screwed anyone over in my life. Like, I've always been honest. And because of that, I think that I have very few haters because people know that I'm just trying to tell it like it is for the rest of us who can't do it.
Yeah.
What was your other question?
Well, you just
The
went
180.
Yeah, the 180. So what triggered that? What triggered you going from being, such a huge advocate and saying, "Oh, this is perfect medicine," to where you're at right now?
Honestly, I've never been a big advocate because I also take an antidepressant,
Okay.
and I really fucking hate the people that are like plants over pills, like, oh, you should try CBD for this or CBD for that. Like, hey, first of all, if you're not a medical person, fuck off. Like, you don't know what people are going through. Do you think that they would try things that were better for them if they could, if they had the access? I mean, it's not easy for people to just quit doing everything they're doing. It's like when people get cancer and people are like, oh, you should just try cannabis oil. It's not either or. It can be both. And I've always been a very objective person because somebody has to. I mean, at this point, the only people that talk about potency limits or anything about keeping the industry more prohibited is prohibitionists. It's totally anti-cannabis people who don't see a medical benefit. And I feel like it's important that a pro-cannabis person like me who doesn't smoke can be like walking the middle line that just says like, hey, you know what? It's not for everyone. Like, my stepfather has glaucoma, but he also has atrial fibrillation. And THC can really fuck with your heart if you have that.
Oh.
And while it could help with eye pressure, I wouldn't let him smoke it. Like, I mean, he wouldn't, but I wouldn't let him anyways. And I think the point is recognizing that it's not for everyone. I mean, my best friend has cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which is when you hit a point where your body starts to react against cannabis, and she couldn't stop throwing up for 17 days. I mean, she ended up in the hospital twice. And a lot of people think cannabis for nausea because it's an amazing antiemetic, but it also can trigger CHS, and she can't even be around it. And people attacked her and said she was a big pharma shill and all of this shit. And to me, it's like, if we are willing to deny the negatives for the sake of progress, we are no different than tobacco or alcohol or pharmaceuticals, because gee, wouldn't that be convenient for the FDA or for a pharmaceutical company to be like, oh, well, only a few people got super sick. We're not going to report that because we need to get it passed. We need FDA clearance. And so I've never called myself an advocate. I was a stoner. I was never a medical user.
Sure.
I just like to get high. Like, I saw Dazed and Confused and Half Baked when I was young. And I mean, there's pictures of me at like 16 with my stoner shirt or my 420 shirt. Like, it's, you know, I was more stereotypical stoner than a medical person.
Sure.
But I think in the end, because I've been in the industry so long, I've been through raids, like I've grown my own, like I've made my own extracts, like I've done everything. You really can't shit on my experience or anything, because I'm just a truth teller, you know, for better or worse.
Let's talk about the truth telling about the podcast specifically. So you've done over 100 episodes now, which, by the way, that's not normal, right? Very few people are putting out the level of content. I get asked all the time, Kristen, all the time, you know, how do I come up with new ideas and topics? How do you figure out what you're going to talk about next?
I mean, honestly, it's not hard at all, because there's just new bullshit every day. So, I mean, with the Cannabis Detector, I've done about like 20 episodes, 25. Then I did story time on Dash Radio.
Okay.
And that one was supposed to be people telling their stories of what it's like in the industry and how crazy it is. But so many people were afraid of being sued that they weren't like fully transparent, because it's fucking nuts, the things that we go through. And then before that, I did Cannabis Business Minds with my ex-business partner, and you can totally tell the difference, because back then she was so positive and such a business person, and I wasn't, and I was trying to be that way because like I know how to run operations, but you can tell because I never said bad words and I sounded way more upbeat, even though I wasn't. And now it's like every day I look at the news and I'm like, oh, Charles Koch is teaming up with Snoop Dogg to start a fucking lobbying group with Weldon Angeles, who was in prison, and now he's trying to get people out. And it's like, bro, like, at what point do we say Snoop Dogg sold out? Or like the fact that Charles Koch, like, are you fucking serious? Like, people, do your homework. This dude is evil. Like, he is like behind conservative media manipulation, and what, all of a sudden he's like changed his tune? Like, this is crazy. So it's not hard at all. It's literally, there's just always bullshit all the time. And the more money that comes into the industry, the more shit there is.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I joke that like, if I get killed, listen to my podcast, and I bet you'll find. Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Well, I'm personally rooting for that not to happen. But I love it. I want to break down what you just said there, because a lot of the people who listen to this, you know, want to get into the world of getting their voice out in the marketplace, right? That's a whole idea of our premise for our entire company. But they don't do what seems to me and you to be so simple, which is there's topics everywhere. I mean, everywhere you can, you know, you read the news in your own trades. But then, okay, so let's talk. I want to do rubber meets the road here, because I actually haven't done this with any of our other guests. What do? Do you just turn on the mic and go, or do you outline stuff? I'm sorry if you don't mind. I'd like to get a little bit more. You break down how you're executing your voice out there in the marketplace.
I mean, I usually just do outlines. I cannot practice. I just shoot from the hip, really. Okay. And so I'll have like a few questions or something, and then I just go on a deep dive Google search and find stuff, and then take notes. And I mean, I recommend people set up Google search alerts for specific things, and then just keep an eye on it. And I think the biggest thing for me is that I'm not employed. So I have the freedom to say whatever I want, and I do, and I cherish that greatly. And I will continue to do that at, you know, risk to my own pocketbook, just because like this, money doesn't, money brings security. Security is happiness. Money doesn't necessarily buy happiness. My happiness is saying what needs to be said. So I just keep an eye on what's going on, and I just take notes, and I have a list of different topics. And when I hear people talk that I think are really interesting, then I'll just reach out to them. LinkedIn has been the best tool ever. It's where I got my audience. It's where I find my guests. It's how I get my speaking opportunities. It's everything. And it's one of the only social media platforms that doesn't censor the cannabis industry, which is crazy.
Wow.
And I loved it because for a long time, people didn't recognize how badass it was. And like the smartest, coolest, most professional cannabis people were on there, and we had the best conversations. And the more popular it gets, the more like Facebook shit starts showing up, which sucks. But it's a place to learn and to meet other people that can really take you places.
Yeah. We absolutely love LinkedIn. In fact, that's pretty much our major outlet for our thought leadership. Have you always been this way? I mean, I know if you were to give advice to somebody who's like, oh, man, I've got really strong opinions about something, I'd really love to be able to get my voice out there. How do you reinforce the strength that you have to get behind what you say?
I don't get emotional. Like, yeah, I have rage, okay? But when I make a post, I make sure that I am right. Whatever I do, I research it. I make sure I'm using the right words. And I don't argue with people. I do not give in to trolls. I make sure that what I say is logical and rational, and I give a source. And no one can fuck with that. Like, I literally have people like blow up on me emotionally. I'll just drop a little rational thing to them. I am like the master at letting people dig their own holes. That is key, is don't use inflammatory language. Like, it is so easy. There's studies that show that people who say inflammatory shit get more views, but it's not healthy. It's not good, and you're going to get a lot of enemies that way. And I find as long as what I'm saying is logical and is lacking in emotion, you can't fuck with that. You really can't. And my goal is teaching people above everything. And I think that's the most important thing, is you can say whatever you want as long as it's accurate. So just be accurate and challenge things. But also, it's different when you're an employee. Like, you have to be careful what you're saying, and that sucks. But again, if you're accurate and you're logical and you're rational, then facts are facts. So
how do you not argue? Oh my God. Well, you just said that. I'm thinking to myself, because I've seen some of the pot shots that people have taken at you on LinkedIn. What sort of discipline do you have to not want to go like attack? How do you do that?
Because I get off on letting people blow up on themselves. Like, I'm like a chess person.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's like my strategy is they blow up and then I just drop facts and then they blow up more. And then, as long as you don't emotionally engage, you cannot lose unless you're wrong, which is why I research what I say before I say it, and I make sure that I'm right. And then other people just blow up on themselves. And then at home, I'm like, yes, oh, dude, like, that was awesome. Like, this one really dumb dude on my coming out interview that I was not planning on doing about my weed addiction and everything, he was like, oh, I had a girlfriend, she went off her meds, she was crazy, blah, blah, blah. Like, all this stupid shit. And at the end, I was like, thank you so much for listening. And by the way, I'm working on a course about logical fallacies, and you just gave me a ton of awesome examples. Have a great day. And like, that made me feel good. Yeah. Like, that's how I win, is by doing a logical smackdown. You can't fight logic. That's the fucking point.
Yeah, that is absolutely the point of logic, which is why it's so powerful. But I want everybody who's listening to this to understand the power of what Kristen just said there. It's going into these things, even though that you have emotion, but doing it non-emotionally and allowing themselves to basically, like you said, blow themselves up. If more of us did that, I really do think that the internet wouldn't be such a horrific place for people to try to have dialogue.
I think that's why I hate Facebook more than anything, is because people are so used to being just nasty idiots. And that's what I like about LinkedIn is, I mean, if you're a fucking idiot and you want to blow up and talk shit, then that looks really bad professionally. Like, most people try to have logical or more non-emotional debates, and that's how we learn. I know that I'm not always right. I mean, I'm open to hearing someone else's side of view, even if it's an opposing view, because that's how we learn. But if you come with your emotions, it's like, wrong platform, dude. That's why I've always focused on LinkedIn, is because like, they're more educated people generally. They're more professional, and they recognize that the way they respond reflects on their professional lives. So that's where I stick to. You go on Instagram, the worst people are the growers. Like, I love growers, but my God, they're such shit talkers. They don't even put their names or faces on their accounts. That type of thing enables people to say the worst, most evil things because they're anonymous. Same with Reddit. And so it's like, I don't really fuck with those forums. Like, I love Reddit, but I don't fuck with those. And I have gotten Twitter. My God, I mean, I have like anxiety attacks. It's so heated on there. Like, I can't do it. I don't know how many times I yelled at Trump. Like, I fucking lost my mind on there. I had to be like, this is toxic.
Yeah.
You know, so really it just depends on the platform that you're on. And that's why I stick with LinkedIn, because at least on there, people try to be civil. And the people that don't get laughed at. And a lot of times I'll leave their stupid comments up just because I know they fuck themselves.
Yeah. And I read some of those and I was like, wow, that person actually said that on LinkedIn. Like, that isn't what LinkedIn is for. And you really hit the nail on the head, right? LinkedIn is for professionals who are looking for education, who are looking for the opportunity to learn from other people and have real dialogue. Of course, there are people who don't do that, but they don't seem to last very long because they realize that the social mores and folkways that are surrounding LinkedIn, which do not exist on Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, any of those, they really, really do here. So, okay. What's next? Where are you going from here, Kristen? I mean, let's talk about the courses. You mind telling us a little bit about what those are?
Yeah. So, when I ran a dispensary, it was like 2005 to 2010. Back then, everyone thought, including me, that it was sativa is a head high, indica is a body high, hybrids are like a mix of the two. It wasn't until I started working at an analytical testing lab in 2015. Well, no, actually at the edible company I was at doing product development is when I started learning about terpenes. And that terpenes, which are the natural flavor molecules in plants, essentially what aromatherapy is, that's the terpene profile of a plant. That in combination with THC, CBD, the active constituents, that's where the effects of cannabis come from. It has nothing to do with sativa indica, which blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, I must atone for my sins, dude. So I started doing terpene classes and teaching people. And so I'm working on getting that online, just like I'm working on spotting logical fallacies, because last year, the amount of disinformation and what it did to our country was appalling. I mean, it's fucking nuts. I mean, my own parents have fallen for a ton of conservative bullshit. And so I'm working on how to teach people critical thinking, like this lost art of questioning the sources. Like, look into if it makes you feel a way, then look into it, dude, because there's a reason for that. And I haven't come out with that yet because it's another thing that I'm working on. But the terpene class, I call it common sense, sniffing out the bullshit. And so I teach that. I'll be doing the Emerge conference coming up. And I'm putting one online as well. Same with the logical fallacy one. I'm still collecting examples for that. which
Gotcha.
is not hard at all.
It's not. There's so much out there that's like, oh my gosh, you totally just did this like textbook form of a logical fallacy, and you did it right
Totally.
there.
Totally. I mean, it's like comparing two different things, like a false equivalency, you know, all kinds of different things that I just see all the time. And the more I read about it, the more they start popping out at me. And it's like, that's not even logical, you know, like what is wrong with people, you know? But I think we're just way too emotional online. But where am I going now is last year I had my third clinical burnout of my career, where it's like I'm an advisor, but to be honest, I just talk everyone out of starting a cannabis company. So there's not much money in it. They are grateful, but I mean, there's no return business in that. So I'm really just focusing on media. Like my dream is to be like the John Oliver of the cannabis industry. You know, I want to talk shit that informs people and makes them laugh at the same time. And with my voice, I mean, if I'm not going to do cartoon work, like what else am I going to do? You know?
I think you should totally put that you're the John Oliver of the cannabis industry on LinkedIn. I don't know. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, that's
totally
a really good point, dude. I really should, because like that's my goal, is to have my own talk show where, you know, it's like a cross between Real Time with Bill Maher, how he has the panel.
Yeah.
Like to me, I love moderating at events because I like to spark debates, because that's how we learn. It's like I don't want to have people that agree with me on everything. What fun is that? Like I would like to have someone who can teach me something or make me see something in a different light. And so my goal is to eventually hit the mainstream media, not just cannabis. So I have the Cannabis Detector podcast that I working on the third season, but I'm also working on another podcast that I haven't released, but I'm going to very soon, called The Confidant Investor. And it's my wealth advisor friend teaching me, a woman who's not comfortable with money really, how to become confident and how to invest and build wealth. And I'm like really excited for that, because that's helping me spread into a new industry, which is money, and to help women, because we are naturally caring. Like I did this one episode with Renee Gagnon. She's a trans woman who runs one of the largest publicly traded companies in Canada, Hollyweed North. And she came on the podcast with me and my ex-business partner back in like 2017, Cannabis Business Minds. And she was like, let me tell you the difference between men and women, because I used to be like a middle-aged white guy. The difference is testosterone is liquid confidence. It's what you see in these investing pitches, and it's like in the boardrooms and everything. It's men and their confidence, just like, yeah, dude, I have this thing that's like gonna do so well, you know. And then she said, like, when she started taking estrogen, she noticed that she started caring like how other people were doing. Like, are you okay? Like, you know, and that's the thing with estrogen and with women, is we're much more appeasing. We're much more like, well, what can you do? Like, these are my prices, but I'll work with you. Like, what I learned is to just think like a man, essentially. It's like men don't appease. They're like, these are my prices. You can do it or you can't. Like, you know, it's not really up for debate. Like, this is, if you can't afford me, fuck it, you know? And that like blew my mind. And so it's like, how do I build up some testosterone? Obviously, like, listen to me. Like, I don't have any fucking testosterone, like, at all, dude. You know, so it's like ways for women to channel their inner research, due diligence. We're more detail oriented. We actually make better investors. Like, we don't act off of some bullshit chemical.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying testosterone is bullshit always, but bubbles are driven by testosterone.
Sure.
Studies have shown this. And so like we get into that in my No podcast.
Well, I think it's that's, and I apologize if this comes across as being challenging, but I'm not saying that you are filled with testosterone, but you have confidence. I mean, listen to your stance on these things and how you position yourself within the marketplace. Kristen, you come across as a very strong, very confident person. So why? I
I
know that
think
that's not
that,
necessarily. Go ahead. Go ahead.
have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
You know what? I've heard of it, but I don't think I could quote what it is.
Okay, so it's essentially that the dumbest people have the most confidence, and the smartest people essentially have imposter syndrome. We know so much that we're humbled by it. It's like we know so much that it's like we know that we don't know everything, and that gives us imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Where it seems like dumb people like Trump, I mean, my fucking God, he's like Dunning-Kruger, like to the max. I mean, plus narcissistic personality disorder, but whatever. It's that they're so fucking dumb that they have all the confidence in the world. Like they don't even know any better. And I think that's my thing is I never really had that many mentors, and I never had someone being like, good job, like you got this or whatever. So I have a strong personality, but confidence comes from successes. And when it comes to money, I'm a really shitty capitalist.
Sure.
And so that's the thing is like I'm trying to learn investing, and my God, it's so complex. And right now I'm just doing paper trading because I'm trying to get a feel for it, because like I'm not confident in, even though I'm really good at spotting bullshit. If anything, I'd be excellent at shorting companies because I pick up on the bullshit. But it's just being more confident in my financial decisions. And when money is on the line, it's a different story. I mean, there's many studies show that we prefer the safer route when it's like we could take a risk and double our money, or we could take the safe route and make less. Most people choose to make less and not lose all their money. And it's like, how do I find a balance between taking risks for a bigger reward in the first place? And in the end, it's just about education and knowledge and research. And that's something that women are really good at. But I don't think that we have very many male counterparts that help us develop that confidence, which is why my co-host reached out to me, because he has 2 daughters and 2 granddaughters. And he's like, I want to help women find their place in the financial world, because we're 50% of the population, and we don't make as much. We don't get paid as much. We have to pay more for everything. Makeup, the pink tax, essentially. The pink tax,
yeah.
So it's like by teaching other women how to be more financially confident in what we're doing. Because in my normal cannabis life, I'm mad confident. I'm like almost confrontational, but not financially.
Sure. Well, let's talk about, so if somebody wants to engage you for something, whether it's teaching a class or speaking or being a guest on the show, what is the best way for them to reach out to you to find out more?
So you can find me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/that Kristen Yoder, or on my website, Soil to the Oil. If you scroll all the way down, there's a contact. And I'm on Instagram at Cannabis BS Detector, but honestly, I just post memes and talk shit on there. So that's not the most professional place to find me.
Gotcha. Well, Kristen, I want to thank you very much. And I'm going to just do a quick recap here, because I really wanted you on the show for a lot of reasons. The main reason was because we firmly believe here that if you're unapologetically yourself, you're going to attract the right people, right? So all of the marketing efforts and all of those sorts of things, yes, it doesn't happen as quickly as you or I would really like some of these things to happen, but at least we're starting to surround ourselves with the tribe that understand who we are and really what makes us tick. And I think you have been unbelievably successful at that. I think you have an amazing, fiercely loyal following who love for you to tell them what BS is and what isn't, because of your analytical mind. So there's number one. Number two, I wanted to have you on because I wanted to talk about the fact that you pick fights, but you do it very differently than other people do, because you do it with this steady hand. It's like you're almost like a surgeon, right? So a steady hand, unemotional, fact-based. For those of you who truly want to pick a fight, do it with facts.
Yep.
Everybody else is just, talking heads doing all sorts of emotional bashing and things like that. We have to get away from that as a society and really go back to here's what is real and true, and here's how we vet the real and true, which is another thing. When you guys follow Kristen on LinkedIn, she shows you where she got the information, which a lot of people don't. You can't just say
Sources.
people say, right? Or I read on
They.
the internet, that's the other favorite one. They
Uh-huh.
say, no, who's they? Darn it. And I think you do a great job with that.
Thank you.
Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
No, I think we're good. But just one last thing. If you're being debated with or argued with, recognize when it is a fucking waste of time. Like, that's what I like to do. I let people dig a hole and then I walk away. I don't keep engaging. You don't have to always win. I mean, just being factual is not always enough for some people. Like, let those people blow up on themselves. They do themselves a disservice to keep engaging. Like, I have to tell my friends, like, don't feed the trolls. You cannot win with everybody. Sometimes it's not fucking worth it. Just walk away. Because, like, for a second last year, I was starting all kinds of shit. Like, I wasn't starting it. My dad's friends are so annoying. And I mean, we were fighting and stuff. And I was getting such, like, adrenaline. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy. So, like, learn to just walk away. Like, put it down. Like, close it out, dude. Because there's so many conflicts right now with vaccines and the pandemic and wearing a mask and politics. It's fucking pointless to keep arguing. Drop facts, walk away.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So if you have not subscribed to our podcast here, make sure you click that subscribe now button below. That way, every time we come out with a new one, it'll show up on your listening device. And we broadcast most every Mondays at about noon Eastern time. So we'd love for you to subscribe to that too. But I want to leave you with all of this. There's an old saying that says, being angry at somebody is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And I think that's a great takeaway from especially with what Kristen just ended with there, is it's not doing you any good. And so, being able to kind of shake that off, especially if you're going to use the pick a fight strategy to truly rise above the noise and be your own loud, there are times where walking away is the best thing, because then what happens a lot of times, and as you can see when you follow Kristen, is you'll see the people spiral out of control, and they do it to themselves. Let them do it to themselves. You don't have to do it. They're more than capable of digging their own holes. And I also want to remind everybody that if you really do want to accelerate your influence, there's a link right at the bottom of the screen here that says, our Proudmouth Academy, which is our Influence Accelerator Academy. We'd love for people to join. It's free. There's some paid versions, but there's free. Lots of great marketing material to help you learn how to rise above the noise and be your own loud. And please, please take a moment. We're going to make sure that all of Kristen's links are in the show notes for you to follow her and find out more about who she is and what she does. So Kristen, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
For all of us here at Proudmouth, this is Matt Haller, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic